I'll send you something through, and actually, I've got a little label. I ordered a sample of it yesterday to be able to check it out. And I mean, the way I'm looking at it, Stephen, is that if contractors are being asked to go in and do an immediate solution to the problem as a interim measure, then how they go about doing that ought to be auditable and standardized, I think. So whether it works or not, I don't know, but I think it's worth sitting down and listening to the guy for about 20 minutes explain to me from a scientific point of view why it works. So I think it's certainly something that's worth exploring.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I've just Googled mold check UK, and quite funny enough, the top sponsor result is from one of our partners, who a company called Pure Maintenance UK, and they have another system which is like they have exclusivity for the UK, and I'm trying to get the guy to come in because he is an expert witness for some around mold, and his solution is a dry fog. So
Yeah,
he can argue and give you all the reasons why dry fog is better than a wet one. But
yeah.
yeah, it's. I did message him a couple of weeks ago, and he just said we're a little bit busy. I think was yeah, the polite way of putting it.
yeah,
What's
so
what's the guy's name?
The
Sorry,
guy's
Connor?
name,
The company's name?
the one that we partner with, Pure Maintenance UK.
Right.
So they claim they're the UK's largest mold remediation service. But and it's because the owner actually did suffer with mold. It nearly killed him. That he went on a kind of fact finding to see what was out there, and the without stealing any of his thunder, he heard about it when Trump, when the first time he was in office, had the White House sprayed with this substance, and apparently, yeah, it was the best he'd found. So he then took the license and is doing very, very, very well.
Excellent. Okay.
But I'll see if I can get one of his team in. I know his team quite well. They're all really good, really passionate about mold.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll see if I have tried.
Isn't there sort of a need here that everyone needs to have a better understanding of the science behind this? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's this guy David from Green Tech. David Thurston, his name is. He seemed to be very knowledgeable, and I think he's got. I mean, I think he could probably present why, because he was explaining to me how mold spores operate and the defenses, the natural defenses that they have, and how spraying it with like an ammonia based technology actually just as Stephen said there, it just exacerbates it.
Yeah.
Whereas this solution that he's developed over the last few years, it uses a different type of approach. So I think Debbie,
the other
might be
guy,
a good one.
George, that I've heard is good is a chap called, I don't know, it's a lady. I don't know. It's an interesting name. Professor Michelle Parrott, who was also involved helping the government draft the Awaab's law.
Oh, right. Okay.
But that's come through my contact with this guy, Russell Thompson at Direct Works. Yes, I'm meant to be catching up on him, and he says that he's working with a company that has a new innovation that kills the mold spores on hard and soft surfaces.
Excellent. Yeah.
So don't know. I mean, it's definitely a big area. I mean, from my perspective, from a competencies perspective, if you look at any of the occupational standards or national occupational standards, there's no mold doesn't exist. Yes, in any of the in any of the standards that underpin qualifications at the moment, just not there. And the
Absolutely.
relevant bodies are meant to be addressing it, but it's been very slow. I mean, I think when the case was raised, I went to IFATE, which has now become Skills England, and said none of this is being addressed in your standards. Oh yes, we're working on it. Well, that's now 3 years later, and there's still nothing been done. Yes. So there's a gap, lag in the system. Yeah.
Connor, as a landlord or representing, you're
Yes.
our only, I think at the moment, landlord on this. What's your what's happening with at your end of things?
Well, being the representative, one from the owner landlord and two the owner landlord in Scotland, it's slightly different. We made, there was an attempt to do something called Healthy Homes.
Yeah.
But the overall tenant satisfaction of that didn't work, so it's now back to the drawing board. We're having internal meetings over the next couple of days and then in the coming weeks, because it's not mandatory in Scotland yet, I think, until March next year. Next year at some point anyway. But the Healthy Homes thing, whatever they did with it, didn't quite work. So they've drafted me in as work, because I did work for a previous business, and we'd come up with a sort of processing solution for it. So I think we're going to go and try and attempt that. They've not really done much or thought about much in the way of the expansion of Awaab's law to the other hazards that it's covering at the moment, and just try to get a handle on damp and mould. The damp spray sounds really interesting, particularly for ones where you've got a little bit more than 24 hours. At least the mould knowledge that I have is that I think it's 30% that you only see on surfaces. So is the spray that you know that yourself and I think it was Stephen had mentioned, is that just cleaning what you see, or is that going into the material to kill the root as well?
I think that's the critical thing, isn't it? The way I understand it, I mean, to a great extent, what?
I mean, you might not get to the root cause, but if you're killing the roots, you're at least buying yourself some reprieve.
Yeah.
Because it would take, if you kill all the roots, then it would take some time to get back to that state. So you can buy yourself some time in diagnosing that. I went through all the Awaab's law stuff over the last day just to sort of re-familiarise myself with it, and I don't know how you can diagnose something within a respond to, diagnose, and then remediate within a 24-hour period. I don't know how you do that.
No.
I don't know how that's possible.
No.
That's the biggest concern I've got at the moment, in that what we're doing, we're creating the environment for just lawyers to step in and bankrupt social landlords.
Yeah.
I suppose it's the sort of rocket. I don't know if it's sort of rocket up the arse. I don't know if that's just a Scottish phrase. That's supposed to sort of push landlords into doing something, because the states of the homes that you're supposed to remediate within 24 hours should never have got to the state that they're in to have to do it within.
That's exactly the argument that I've been hearing as well. That's at the end of the day, you wouldn't want to start from where you are today. That's it. That
24 hours. I mean, even the 5-day one, you have to do something within 5 days. Could be tight. I mean, I've created and developed a survey that's being utilised at the moment by Wheatley, and we are able, even the sort of student level guys that we've employed, that they're able to find and diagnose what's probably the likely cause of a lot of issues externally, and we're working on the internal one at the moment. So I'd imagine, I'd like I don't know if this is maybe me going off on a tangent now, because I missed the challenge catch up on Friday. I was off. As if we could, I think it would be a good idea to have this sort of MBS library type style thing, for that landlords and stuff can access. I don't know if that's easy for us to do as a collective, that you can sort of type in where your issues are, different types of things that you're seeing, images that you're seeing that can help diagnose what the likely issue is and where the likely issue is, and where landlords can look. So Wheatley's got me and a couple of other surveyors, but I'm aware that other landlords maybe don't have that, and I think that's maybe something that could be quite useful as a tool.
That's where I'm going with this, Connor. What I want to do, and certainly I think within BIM for Housing, I think that's something that we'd like to try and facilitate in some way. I mean, we've already got obviously all the standards around fire safety and things like that we've been doing. So I'd like to mirror that with this as well, to do exactly what you said there, to be able to identify what the common experiences are, what the common problems are, and then look at ways that we could then address them. So that we can then have, if you like, an industry best practice that's actually come from the industry that is peer reviewed. So for example, we've got on this call at the moment, we've got both Stephen and also Nick, who are both providing technology sensors to do different things. But if we could, if we could have a common, there's going to be lots. I mean, I was down at the Homes exhibition. There was quite a few other companies. There was a company called Vericon there who seemed to be quite big in this as well. If we can bring together the people, because the demand, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but I think the demand for this is far greater than any individual supplier is going to be able to satisfy.
Yeah.
So therefore, if we can agree with what a good solution looks like, then we've got the opportunity to have something that is that landlords can actually tap into and not rely on people that are coming up with solutions that maybe aren't as well tested.
Well, I've written down some stuff that I can maybe show to yourself or at a different time about what that solution looked like when we built previous business. Venture capitalists had no interest in it, so that's why they shut it down. I don't know if they're maybe changing, if they maybe think we're changing their mind now. But we had a solution that we thought would really work. So I've written some stuff down. It's not really in a. It's just sort of word vomit on a Excel spreadsheet at the moment. But if you give me some time to pretty it up, then it's something that I'd be quite happy to share, because I think the solution was fine. It was a full process, start to finish. It's for, at least for the landlords in Scotland. I know there's a few more sort of technologically or BIM savvy and out there. It's just that it's that marrying up between what the IoT sensors say and the skills that the landlord has to interrogate that and see what it means. There's like a surveyor, an architect, built professional link. That this solution, the one that we've come up with before, sort of relies on. And I think that's why I go to the sort of MBS library type thing, is that over time you can almost get rid of it. If you go, right, my IoT say this is what my images say, you put it in and it spits out, these are what your likely things are. So that's where I think it could go.
Connor, who do you work for in Scotland?
I work for Wheatley Housing Association.
Okay.
I think I've been here over a year now. I'm pretty sure we're the biggest housing association in Scotland. We'll be one of the biggest in the UK. There's, at last count, there was over 65,000 houses owned and a further 30 odd thousand factored. They had hired us when I was at my previous job to do a lot of this stuff. They liked what we were doing, so they brought us in. We all sort of went in different directions what we were doing, but there's now a focus of getting it back to what we were doing before. The issue that they said when we walked in, and it was from 2 or 3 people, was they installed, I think it was something like 5,000 houses. There was a significant amount of houses really installed IoT, but everything was red. Now, I think Nick and Stephen have said it's all about getting a good IoT provider, and they obviously did not have a good IoT provider, and they did not have somebody that could interrogate the information that the IoTs were talking about.
Yeah.
So,
I asked that as a fellow Scot, but you wouldn't believe that from my accent. But I would do a lot of work with BESS, which is the Built Environment Innovation Centre in Scotland.
yeah,
And I know they would be helpful, George, in promoting this, yes, or commenting. And also they're very good at running lots of hands-on interventions. Yes, could be something we get them to do, some, getting people in a room and going through a process and understanding it. Yes, we're doing a lot at the moment around building physics, which obviously relates to building pathology and all of this. Yes, so and with them in a project, we're building a big kind of knowledge ontology of all the sort of know-how, and this could be an area we include in that as well. So that's why I was asking where Connor came from. Yes, so because I think getting some good training interventions up and running quickly is important here. There's a lot of misunderstanding. And also, there is also the other side of the story of, a lot more consumer protesting going on, like Mold for Mums and all of this stuff. Yes, there's lots of very good people trying to do this, but, there's no shortage of activity, but there's nothing that's sort of linking everyone together.
and Wheatley's done well to educate itself on mould, sort of hiring the right people, but you still get the old. And I'm thankful that Awaab's law kind of says you're not allowed to do this anymore. But there's an instant. It's the tenant's fault. It's the tenant's fault.
Yeah.
Scotland building regulations say you can dry your clothes inside. It's up to the architect, the designer, or the landlord to make sure that you can ventilate it well enough. Obviously, for that, the bit the landlords are struggling with, if there are clothes getting dried inside, or there's larger families, is having more people than what the house was originally designed for. And having that, I'd mentioned it before, is having that sort of BIM dimension where you actually think about the people. So 5 people in a 2-bed needs this versus 2 people in a 2-bed needs this.
Do you know where the worst, where mold is most prevalent? It's in new builds. Because they build them so quickly, seal them up, and the mold just goes in and has a party. There's a great one close to me. I'm quite close to Silverstone racetrack, and over the last 12-18 months, they've released some lovely properties which look over the racetrack called the Escalades. Every single one of them's got mold in.
Oh my God!
I can almost guarantee that the loft insulation hasn't been rolled properly into the eaves, and all your extraction fans have not been properly ducted to the outside. That seems to be the most common thing we found. We found 244 or was it flat to me? Was it street? No, it was 200. I think it was 200 odd, 244 fans that had not been ducted.
Wow.
They'd just been attached. And I think that's absolutely, that's not just us, that's not just another problem, that's every problem. I mean, my old flat, we couldn't figure out. I had a plumber and an electrician come out to test the fan to see if I needed a new one in mould. It was a dark bathroom, no windows. to come out, test the fan to see if it was working, and they're like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this fan. I paid good money for them to come out and have a look. And eventually I was like, no, I don't believe her. There's not something wrong with this. So I moved the fan out. There it was.
Yep.
Was ducted. The duct was running, but they hadn't connected the fan to it. So what was happening was moisture's gone in and then into the void. That's
Personally, we've just
Unbelievable.
upgraded our fan because we've got a problem in our in part of our house, and I've done everything. So we had the roof rechecked because there was leaks apparently. We then, what you said, we had somebody come in and check the fans, and they said they're not sufficient for the size of the room. You need a more powerful. The fan is probably 30, 40 years old. And they said it's not compliant with what it should be now. It needs to pump out a certain amount of obviously air. So we upgraded that, and then slowly we even went as far as having a full mold analysis. So we took, I don't know if you know, there's a company, I can send you the link. It's a laboratory where they
I think we've used them.
Yeah, so you do an air sample, put a device, sucks all the air in, then you send it off for analysis, and it gives you a full report. Happy to share that if anybody's interested, to show you what extremes you can go to.
Please do.
Yeah,
Please
I'll do that. But it's my personal one in my house, so don't laugh. Yeah, but it was a concern 2 years ago before we started this journey, knowing nothing about mold, but then speaking to specialists and hearing about it and how it affects people so badly. He's like, I've got my family here. I know I've got mold. Why have I not done anything about it?
Yeah.
But I'm happy to share that with everybody.
Yeah, I've had it in my house as well. So I think it's very, very common. Yeah. I think the other thing on the first of these calls, a couple of weeks ago, well, in fact, before we started it, one of the building safety managers from Metropolitan Thames Valley said to me he'd been told of a natural remedy to this, and it's a plant called a mother's tongue, and I bought one and I put it in our bathroom, and it works. Really? It absorbs the moisture, so I'm not saying it solves all problems, but I think it's quite a nice looking plant as well. And for 20 quid, you've got something that certainly can help. I think part of where I'm going with this is to look at things from a point of view of, as you're saying, Stephen, stop it from happening in the first place. So to inform the construction activity. Also, then to be able to do investigations to understand what the cause of the problem is, but then have effective ways of contractors being able to deal with it.
Yeah,
and then to put for example the sensor technology that Nick and you do to prevent it from happening again.
Is it possible to see that it's happening before you see the mold?
So what you can do is you can obviously, what we monitor is temperature plus humidity plus time. So it's not our science. We've got an algorithm. So we took reference from different science papers to say what level, and I'm happy to share what we've used for the back end of ours. And basically, if the high temperature and set humidity is for a certain level, there's a high risk, low risk, or no risk. But going back to what George says, the contractors, if they was to put them in at the point of build, then they'd have a good overview of how their buildings are performing and which ones are at risk and which ones aren't. But it's a cost. It's something that's not happened yet. So somebody needs to get the calculator for them and work out, how much does it cost you to eradicate mold once you've got it? But
what I mean is, before the mold is actually visible on the outside, is there a way of knowing that there's something going on that is invisible?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Is there a sensor or something that can say, that there's X amount of damp deep in this wall, so it's it's going to happen in an amount of time, there's going to be mold coming through? Is there something that does that?
You'd have to marry up a whole different host. At the moment, maybe Nick and Stephen can correct me, but at the moment you'd have to marry up a host of different surveys to give you that. So yeah, like thermographic, you could do thermographic images to see where your cold spots are, along with the IoT information that says, oh, that this humidity is over here, your dew point is here. So if that cold spot, we're getting into the time where, so where the cold spots could become a problem. So that's likely to grow there, or there's a high risk there. That's a really bad cold spot there. The insulation's failed. It's not in the eaves. The insulation's failed. It's not in this part of the wall. You've got high humidity in there. If you're going to reach, chances are you'll reach the dew point, so you've got a chance of it growing here. But so far as I'm aware, there's no sensor that says you have mold in this house.
No.
Yeah.
Nick, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with Stephen as well. Ultimately, we're looking at a number of different factors and calculating dew point and the risk of damp occurring first of all. Okay, and then if damp pervades, then the risk of mold occurring. Are we directly measuring whether the mold is there or not? No, absolutely not. What we're doing is by understanding the dew point, understanding whether there's enough heat in the home that's getting into the fabric of the building to prevent cold spots. To prevent the fabric of the building being cold enough and being surfaces where condensation will occur. I mean, the accuracy is about 99%. So we can, with a high degree of accuracy, predict that if a house is likely to have developed mold or not, whether it's seen or otherwise. So that's pretty much the business that we're doing. So we can do that. Absolutely can do that. And it really is from the environmental monitoring.
I think the other thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say the other thing I would like to be looking at is really to some extent what Debbie was saying earlier, being able to look at examples that the digital record should tell you who's done the work. So if there's any retrofit activity, for example, the record should show you who's done the work. Now, if a problem occurs, then it may well be that that's down to the competence of the contractor that's carried out the work and diligence. And therefore, if we could have proper digital records of who's done the work at each stage, which we should be capturing now, then you can then use that to say, it becomes almost like mandatory occurrence reporting, being able to go back and say, what circumstances is it because of a particular tradesperson, or is it a training issue, or what circumstances is actually leading to that? So that's one of the things I'd like to be able to do.
It also depends whether you have ghosts in your house. If you have ghosts in your house, you have cold areas.
There is that.
Yeah, my brother's house, he has ghosts, and it's definitely colder where the ghosts go. There's no doubt about it. And my dog hates it. He goes into the room and barks in the corners where the ghosts visit. Quite funny. so dog detection here could be quite useful.
Just to clarify this, Debbie is leading our consultancy group within BIM for housing. So I think that's an interesting measure that we ought to be the paranormal aspect of things, Debbie.
That's what we're saying. Mold is, it's a Ghostbuster. That's what I said. Psychoplasm or something like that. That's just actually mold.
Well, yeah.
Is there a monitor that, just thinking about being able to monitor is there a monitor that's been programmed to count mold spores of the specific sort of bad molds? Is that possible, or is that being done?
I believe there is one, but it's about £60,000. So there is there you go. I'll see if I can get the details on it if anybody wants one. But there obviously there's dust, so there's particulate matter, but you're not going to.
Yeah.
know which kind of mold or why there's a build-up or an increase in dust.
Nick,
On
you're
mute,
you're
Nick.
on mute.
Sorry. Yes, we've got a partner that's got basically AI imaging technology. So you take a photo. So as part of the triage, you can take a photo of the mold, and it categorizes the mold and the mold type from the image. But that's not monitoring the spores.
Mhm.
It's very interesting, though.
I mean, there's about 1,000 different kinds of mold as well, isn't there? It's just never ending.
Yes, some are worse than others. I think that's what
Yeah.
I think it's tick. I think the business was tick that we used. They came and done all the dry fogging and mold tests and air tests and all that. And they look
There
for
are.
certain bad ones.
But mold's
Yeah.
mold at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whilst there's some that are worse than others, and it's really they all require similar conditions to thrive in. And it's just understanding, making sure that we prevent those conditions to exist to begin with, and you're going to prevent the mold occurring. And that's one of the reasons why I know, George, you were talking about this magic spray that kills mold, but I'll be honest, I've been to so many similar networking events recently, and any kind of mold killing spray or bleaching agent or mold wash is half the time, actually does the opposite. You might kill it immediately.
No,
It's
I
not a
was
cure.
I
Yeah.
was similarly skeptical, Nick, but
Yeah.
I think
There's
because
danger though, George, is that the problem is that, and this is a big contributor, and I do get quite passionate about this. Okay, most of the time, forgive me for saying this, the sector's just had faster horses and done more of the same. Right, we're doing more wash every single time, and you're not fixing the issue. And anything
I
that takes
agree.
us in that direction is a misdirection, because it's really understanding the root cause. And and I think we've covered this before, and really understanding the root cause, and often that's there might be contractors that haven't done a retrofit properly, so you're not compliant with your past 2035. It might be underheating in home. It might be a whole number of different factors themselves. So it's a really complex problem, but it's making sure we can go through sequence and make it data driven, whatever
Yeah.
that
I
looks
agree.
like, and go through a sequence of understanding, and learning. And that's the other thing. It's what worked last time, what's most effective each time, what didn't work, and have that feedback loop constantly coming
That-
in.
Yeah.
That
correct.
feedback loop
Yeah.
element,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. We need to look at what's the problem, analyze the problem, come up with a solution, and then capture the learnings from that, and then make those available. I mean, one of the things that we've done recently, Debbie's been involved with BIM for Housing for a long time, and that one of the things that we did years ago, we created a black box site or black box area on BIM for Housing, and the objective of that was to provide the means for people that came across problems to actually take a photograph and upload it so that we could then use that to inform the industry. And the Sharon McClure, who's she's now president of the Association for Passive Fire Protection, but she's a specialist um, um, in passive in fire stopping and things like that. Connor, she's up your way. Uh, she was giving, she was a very keen user of this. So when she was coming across some fire stopping that wasn't done properly, that went straight up onto the black box site. So but we didn't really have the resources, because remember, we're all volunteers, so there's only so much we can do. But we were capturing this information, and then I was at an event last September, a couple of months ago, that Judith Hackett was at, and she was talking about. I'm probably repeating what I said last time, but she was talking about a sprinkler system that was put in, and the pump for the sprinkler system could only had the right duty to pump to the 13th floor, and there were 20 floors in this block. So the contractor had put in the wrong duty of pump, but they'd done that because the designer had given them that spec. And her argument was, understandably, that the contractor should have reported that. And I was thinking about that afterwards, and I thought, well, who would they report it to? You know, because they've won the job probably on a lowest price tender. Yeah, they should have reported it to things, but I then learned that the regulator will only accept notifications from either the principal accountable person or from a resident. So there was no mechanism for them to feed anything through. So there's an organization called Cross,
Yeah.
which is there as a body. Again, I think they're volunteers, but there's some funding behind them to be able to do analysis of a particular problem. But we need to collect that information. So,
but George, there's only 30% or so awareness that Cross exists in the industry. There was something recently. It's extremely low. I mean, a lot of people are just not aware of it.
And that's where I'm coming from with this, Debbie. Yeah. So what we've done, we've refreshed the black box site. So if anybody's interested in that, if you put black box in the chat, and we can take you through what the black box site does. And the idea is that exactly as Connor's saying there, if you come across a problem, report it, just put it up. It's anonymous. You put it up on the black box site. And what I'm trying to do is have that so that becomes a triage for Cross, because they're the ones that are they've got the resources to actually investigate these things. But if we can capture the problems and then tie those back, I mean that I guess goes back to what you're saying as well, Nick. Let's identify what the problems are, and how they're being solved, so that we can learn from them. Does that make sense? Do people think that would be a useful thing to do?
Yeah.
I think it all comes down basically to architects. It's architects' fault, really. This is. Are you there, Justin?
I am. Here we go.
Yeah. So. So, should we just get a little bit of a perspective, because Justin's an architect, but he's passionate in this whole area. How do you think we can we can do something about this?
That's a very good point. So I have been listening, and it also there was a comment earlier about moisture in current buildings, like new builds, that came up earlier.
Yeah.
I remember being told when I was a teenager, we had relatives that lived in Somerset area, and we were told that when new houses were built in that area, they'd be left for a year to dry out before they were occupied. And I so I heard the anecdote earlier about modern buildings, and I thought it just shows that there are many factors that lead into these situations. One of them primarily is economic, of course. And then part of me, the cynical part of anyone probably thinks, so why don't we learn? But I mean, no matter how much we all understand what is the cause of these problems, there are other factors that prevent us from the manifestation of mold, let's say. So that's one answer to your question, George. How do we tackle it? I guess educating people. I know somebody that was in control of a residential block, and they were saying that the residents are just overcrowding the houses, so they don't open the windows because it's cold. So there's no change of air. I mean, years ago when I used to attend CPDs as an architect, we had a company come through and they showed us that in that CPD, in that era, they said that the major cause of mold buildup in buildings was a lack of free flowing air to capture the dampness in the air and take it out of the building. And they showed us examples in the CPD where there was mold, and they introduced, in one case, a huge fan. There was a fan that was an entire loft hatch, sort of the loft hatch. If you imagine a loft hatch, it was the whole size of the loft hatch. And they said it took it out. So that's my background, sort of experience and knowledge of mold. How do we deal with it in the present? I guess systems that make sure, for example, like when the ducts are in place but not attached, how does anyone get away with that? I mean, someone's not joining the dots on that one, surely. That a building is being signed off as occupiable where the ducts are not connected. I do realise there's a series of constructions. So if I'm the inspector and I come in and the ceiling's up and I can't see the connection between the instruction device and the ducting, then how am I ever, without deconstructing the ceiling, how am I going to know whether it's connected or not? I mean, I guess you can do smoke tests. I'm not an expert, obviously. But is that the sort of direction you're thinking of, George, as in my response to the issues that are coming up?
Yeah, definitely. And I think also looking at things in a joined up way. So one of the things I think that we've lost is the architect's role in having an oversight of everything, because the way work packages are broken up now, and design and build, there's a disconnect between anybody that's got an overarching view of things, and I think that's a shame.
There's another part, so conscientiousness. I mean, there's another part of this as well. It's accountability. I know that the law is now aligning accountability with the responsible person, but if your reputation was on the line, you wouldn't allow a building to be occupied that actually has a problem with lack of ventilation, that's assumed, that's leading to mold, that can lead to health issues. I mean, between these meetings, actually, just as an aside, I've actually got a friend who lives in a large house that they can't afford to run. And as a result, the house has got mold on the walls because they don't heat it earlier. There was a mention earlier about underheated houses, I think. And I can tell you that he's got, there he is Nick. So that friend of mine, he's my age. He's had bronchitis, he claims, for 5 weeks. But myself and another friend know that part of the reason he's got bronchitis for 5 weeks is because he lives in an underheated house with dry rot. And it's a double-fronted Georgian house. It's quite an impressive house, but it's just not been maintained. So yeah, I've got a friend my age who's got health issues and extended illnesses that are as a result, I should say, of, I think, the mold in his house. And I've done other research into mold, and it would appear that it can affect the central nervous system as well. There's all kinds of health issues that relate to it. I think some of them are not scientifically proven, but there's strong suggestion, there's a observable suggestion that some people can develop central nervous system type dysfunction because they're exposed to certain molds and spores. Like I said, not an expert. I've done my own research because I've got a friend who's ill, lives in a moldy house.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm quite passionate about in this whole arena is the whole philosophy of risk transfer. So somebody must be to blame. Yeah, and we've had that already with on the fire safety side of things, and I think this has got the potential for being even greater, because as has been said already, the causes of mold are complex, and I think if we, I agree with Connor that it's challenging to actually raise the fact that the residents have got some responsibility in this, but clearly they do. I know that the reason we ended up with mold was because we living in the house we had so it's a small amount in a bathroom, but for the reasons that you were saying earlier, Stephen, we didn't have enough ventilation, so now we've replaced the fan, and that seems to have addressed it. But I think one of the things that concerns me is if we just come back to the fact that the residents got no equity or responsibility in this, then we're not going to actually solve the problem, and people like Justin's friend are going to be affected by it.
Yeah.
And I was talking last week with one of the fire safety guys from one of the big councils, and he was saying that the real problem, and he's got into a bit of a sort of a challenging discussion with Dame Judith about this in one of the events, because she was saying it's all down to you need to communicate more effectively. Resident engagement is so critical. And he said to her, actually, probably stupidly in the open meeting. I say stupidly, I don't mean it in that way, but he challenged her on it. He said, "So how do you go about doing that?" And he explained what they did, and they put a huge amount of effort into setting up demonstrations. They got suppliers to come and show what the fire safety measures that were being put in the apartments when. And what we actually discovered, or what they found, was that of something like 200 residents, only 20 came to the event. And he said, we've got, if they just won't engage, then what actually do we do?
Yeah.
So I've got one other bit to just contribute on this, and that's that I met some guys a couple of years ago from a company, I think it's JML or something like that. And what they do is they put laundry systems and things like that into resident blocks. And one of the reasons they do that is to give the tenants the means of drying their clothes in a proper industrial drying system. He said, but quite often that's either cut out from the project fee, or even if it is installed, the residents don't use it. And therefore they need. I think they're on some sort of basis of they have to pay something for it. They're not getting the income because the residents are not choosing to use it. So there has to be some sort of responsibility there.
Well,
I would say.
There is a government competition at the moment to address that, because that landlord tenant engagement, how do they get their message to them, especially around Awaab's law? So if somebody reports an issue, obviously the landlord then takes action, but how do you keep the tenant updated and educated around, okay, we're not supposed to say it's the tenant's fault, but education around how to improve. And from my and Nick's side, having sensors, and I've seen this work before, if you show people information and show they're improving the situation, they will act. I'll give you one quick example. We did a project in France for a load of holiday homes around energy monitoring. And people were coming abusing the system, using their EV chargers, leaving the aircon on all day while they went to the beach. And what we did, we put some energy monitors in, and they were allowed to use X amount per week. Say it's 10 kilowatts per week. And we put an LED screen, which was a happy face, smiley face, sad face, if you was either below or above. And they, from going most people to abusing it, to I think it was 80% increase or decrease in people actually hitting their limit because were seeing or if they felt involved. And I think there is something there for Awaab's law, and obviously the government knows it's a weak spot of how do you get that message, how do you engage with the tenants and to keep them updated.
I think that's right, but for any communication, it's got to be two-way, hasn't it? And people have got to accept it. And again, anecdotally, what they were saying last week when I was talking to people, they were saying that what people are doing with fans, even though you've got a working fan, what people are doing is going to take the fuse out because it's noisy or because they perceive it's using too much energy or whatever. Yeah, so there has to be, obviously,
Yeah, I think it's also there's another factor here is we've got to educate people from kids as well. There's bad parenting here. Anyone who's got teenagers, it's very hard to even persuade a teenager to open a bedroom window to let any air in. They just so if you're brought up and you're always told you got to open your bedroom window or whatever as a kid, then you're going to be a bit more open-minded to some of this stuff later. Yes, but if you're not brought up with any of that, parenting around this, then there's a gap as well. It's a fact. Yeah.
I'm conscious that we've had a
Yeah.
couple of new people join. I know David. Graham, where are you from, please? Oh, you're on mute, David. Graham.
Graham.
You're still on mute, Graham.
Graham's from Mold Check. He was supposed to be with me. Let me just tell him he's on.
Sorry, yeah, I've got it. There, I found it.
Hello, Graham.
Hello,
Okay,
David.
chap. Hello, Graham.
Nice to see you again.
And you.
Yeah, to be honest, I've had since the 1990s, well, 1990 exactly, I've had 35 years working in social housing. And for the last 3.5 years, I've been working with partner Danny, as well as with David Thurston, on supplying a product and a service in regard to mold. And I think that you're all hitting the nails, but there's that many different nails that it becomes a bit of a confusion. In regard to mold itself and the point that Justin was raising, there are 150,000 plus different molds, and not all of them give off kind of mycotoxins that are harmful to people. And even every one of us now, we're sat in rooms inside houses and offices, and there's mold there. There's mold in the air. You just can't get away from it, but the readings would be acceptable under the circumstances. And with the ones where the mycotoxins that are given out, the aspergillus and penicillium being a classic, it's the repeated exposure that causes the problem, that causes the symptoms that people have, and they can be varying different degrees to it. In our experience, a lot of the time, it's that multitude of things that you're talking about. How many times does a surveyor go into property and say, click, oh, there's the noise, the fan's working, and never uses an anemometer to check whether it's drawing adequately. The other thing with fans is that how many times do they get cleaned and serviced? It should be an annual inspection. Landlords don't do it. Is it the tenant's responsibility to clean the fan? Well, I wouldn't have thought so. Cleanliness is a massive thing with mold. If there's no food there, the mold won't grow. It's quite simple. The spores and the moisture can be there, but if there's nothing for it to feed on, then it won't grow. So there's an absolute. My partner Danny is a mold expert. He was a loss adjuster who went into a property and saw mushrooms flying about, the infrared heaters on, the blowers blowing in the insurance sector, and again working in social housing as I have done. I also did a spell in insurance in the early 2000s. And when you get a bad leak in a property on a private job, you have to have a drying certificate. That property has to be dry. In social housing, they repair the leak and then they continue as if normal. And sometimes these leaks are that bad, they can take 6, 9, 12 months to dry out in the property. So the relative humidity, having fans on, it's still going to be an opportunity if everything else is right for mold to grow. I'm based in Sale, South Manchester, and locally we were working with a landlord here, and there was a lady in a property, and every morning she woke up and she felt really, really ill. And during the day she got better. She said, I feel fine. And the mold on the ceiling in the bedroom was actually causing her to feel unwell. So there's a massive, what I would say, knowledge gap on mold. And one of the things that we do at Mold Specialist UK is we want to train and educate, and we do that with all the social landlords that we work with. We're working with L&Q, Taurus, Star Housing, St Ledger Homes, and St Ledger in particular are revolutionising the way that they operate with their tenants. And you're right, a lot of it is communication. And going back to the point that Debbie made about opening windows, technically you only have to open them for 5 minutes. If you open the windows for 5 minutes a day, You
Yeah.
let most of the air that's the dampness that's in, because don't forget every night that when we're in bed sleeping, we give off a third of a pint of water. So
Yeah.
if there's two of you in a room, that's 2/3 of a pint of water, and that moisture you need to get rid of. And opening the windows for 5 minutes, it's gone. It's a simple thing. But if you open the windows, and don't forget, I live in Manchester, and it's absolutely peeing down outside, and the relative humidity outside is 70 odd percent, then I'm just letting all that moisture in. So you've got to have that level of understanding and awareness. For another unknown fact about mold and penicillium, 50% of the UK population are allergic to it. You go to the doctors and you're not feeling well, and the doctor says, I'm going to put you on antibiotics. The next question, are you allergic to penicillium? Because if he gives you penicillium as an antibiotic, you're going to make you feel even worse and not any better. So it really is about knowledge.
I think the other important thing there, Graham, is that there are very few chemical products on the market that actually can inactivate penicillium or Aspergillus mold, which is my learning with my business, our relationship. So my business is all about two technologies in principle. One is the use of gaseous ozone, aqueous ozone for different applications of use. My journey with gaseous ozone started at Oxford University back in 2012, where I was approached about mold issues inside student accommodation, funnily enough. And we put very small, unobtrusive ozone devices into student rooms by the windows, just to try and manage the circulation of air by using ozone to inactivate the mold spores. And it worked quite well. More recently, my business does work within the prison service on all different fronts using a solution that we produce that Graham markets called HOCl, hypochlorous acid. Well, hypochlorous acid, in my experience and knowledge, is really the only real effective tool for killing mold, spore, penicillium or Aspergillus. And we know this because my business is very much in the food industry. We work with food manufacturers and food processors, and they have big problems with mold spores, particularly penicillium and Aspergillus in cold store. And we manage that. We manage the environmental airspace by fogging with our fogging systems into those cold stores to break down any penicillium or Aspergillus mold. And to be able to say that we can kill it, we had to go through a process with an independent laboratory, which is a BSI 17025 approved laboratory specific to food manufacturing, where we did all of the testing relevant to mold spores and yeast and also bacteria, where we have to go through due diligence to test to see whether or not our solution can kill it, the contact time, which is important, and the log kill. So the log kill needs to be in excess of 5 logs, so 99.99%, and the contact time needs to be the contact time defined by the BSI standard. All of that we've done, and all of that we have the knowledge for. And the great thing about HOCl is, unlike its counterparts rely upon high toxicity. What does that mean? High alkalinity, so anything north of a pH of 9, 10, 11, 12 or more, which makes it toxic, which means you have to use KOSH, whereas the pH of our solution is only 5.5 to 5.6. And the difference is that HOCl is like a silver bullet, whereas your alkaline-based bleach and chemical solutions has to overwhelm the spore. The spores are notoriously tough, and they're notoriously tough because they wear a coat of armor, and it's the coat of armor that protects the bacterium from being destroyed. And that's the point. If you don't kill it correctly, then you never get rid of it. And it's how you kill it, and it's the contact time of kill that's relevant. With HOCl, unlike its alkaline counterpart, the actual the microbe of HOCl passes directly through the armor into the spore, and it destroys the proteins being produced inside that spore almost instantly. It can't reform and it can't remass. And that's the benefit. And of course, it's safe because HOCl is produced from tap water, a little bit of salt and a little bit of vinegar, which has been my quest for 13 years to bring an innovation to market that has a point of difference over all of its counterparts. And it's safe, and it's non-allergenic. So if you're going into a property where you have got penicillium mold and you're dealing with it using a chemical, the chances are the client is suffering from the effects of penicillium mold or aspergillus, and then you're chucking some form of chemical around. Well, guess what? Neither are going to help in their health. So that's why the technology
Can
that we
can I
have.
just add there, David? Because I think you've hit a critical point. Mold has a root system. So when they've been a lot of the social landlords have been using the chemical based, they've been wiping the mold down and thinking, oh yeah, it's done it. The bleach has discoloured it, but they don't understand that the roots are left behind.
Yeah.
And like mowing the lawn when you've got weeds in, you think you've got rid of the weeds, but you haven't. The roots are there and it comes again. And that's why there is this vicious circle going round of killing it with chemical based stuff that doesn't work.
And that's
It's
why
crazy.
that's why the reference that I make to the silver bullet is really important, because the silver bullet passes through the cell wall and directly into the center of the spore of the bacterium, and at that point it breaks down the proteins that are being produced by that spore that cause it to live and to multiply, and that's the critical part. So you're killing it from the inside, and once you've killed it, that spore can't reform or remass because you've killed the stem.
Connor, does that answer the question that you asked earlier about? Yeah.
I think so. Sounds like there's a solution there. Yeah, we discussed earlier before you came on. That you only see about 30% of the actual mold, and there's still 70% that's inside the building material, inside the fabric of the building that you don't see. So if that's a solution that can penetrate into the roots, then that's definitely something that I'd like to take to the executive.
We did a lot of research with the NHS a few years ago at the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital in Birmingham, where we did direct comparison between their chlorine-based chemical solution and HOCl. And one of the interesting points that came out of a 6-month pilot was, yes, we achieved all the microbial kill that we were looking to obtain, particularly on MRSA and also on C. difficile. But we also had feedback from patients in wards where the cleaners were cleaning around patients, elderly, infirm, who said, when you're using that solution, we don't end up having breathing issues or feeling unwell compared to when you're using your chemical base, which I don't mean to be rude, but it's like, well, no shit, Sherlock. You shouldn't be using it. If you go and take your bottle of bleach from underneath your kitchen sink that you use to clean your bathroom, guess what it says? Don't breathe the spray in. Well, good luck with that one. It's a spray.
And they put perfume in it, and when you can smell the perfume, oh, you're breathing in the spray.
Of course,
It's amazing.
HOCl was tested by the World Health Organization back in 2019, fortuitously before COVID, to see whether or not its antiseptic tendencies were better than any of its counterparts used for burns, used for gangrene and other open lesions, Staphylococcus being another, and they proved without any doubt at all that it was far more effective and far more efficient. And I'll give you one last scenario, and then I'm going to shut up. Promise. So I've had an inquiry recently through the RFU for Bath Rugby Club, who train at Bath University, where one of their up and coming players recently had an operation to a shoulder, and that operation had healed almost, and he was having a training night on an AstroTurf, Tiger Turf synthetic surface, and he caught Staphylococcus in the womb. And Staphylococcus is not nice. It really isn't nice. And they try to blame it on animal feces, bird feces, which of course Staphylococcus doesn't come from animal or bird feces. But when we did some more testing, we found that the Staphylococcus was actually coming from phlegm that players were spitting onto the synthetic surface. And that's where this kid caught it from. So what we're now using is we're using a small tractor with a spray bar. We're spraying the surface with HOCl to kill off the Staphylococcus. It's a great I mean, Graham, I'll bore you with it until the cows come home. But for spores in mold, we have had success in the prison service. We have success in food manufacturing, food processing in the same way, because it's a big problem. And we have success in other sectors as well, private healthcare, care homes.
Yeah.
I'm
We've
done.
never had a callback. We've been using the product for 4.5 years. We've never had a callback.
Okay, that sounds very good. HOCl, is that what does that stand for, David?
Hypochlorous acid.
So that isn't your product, as so that's a technology that you are implementing.
The HOCl is the terminology of the solution that we produce.
Yes.
The chemical infrastructure is called HOCl. It's how you make it,
Yeah.
how you produce it, and the ingredients that go into producing it. So when we produce our HOCl, we're looking to achieve in excess of 99% purity. What does that mean? Competitors in the market, depending on how they produce it, may only achieve, say, somewhere between 60 to 80% purity. The other 20 or 30% is hypochlorite. Well, hypochlorite's bleach. What we look to do through our electrolysis process, which is the sweet spot, is we buffer the solution before electrolysis and we fix the pH at 5.5 to 5.6. By fixing the pH at 5.5 or 5.6, we guarantee that our end product is not over 99% pure HOCl, which is what the World Health Organization achieved when they tested it as an antiseptic. So that's the point. HOCl is the word for hypochlorous solution. Hypochlorite is your bleach, your chlorine, and they're determined by their pH levels. Hypochlorous is very different in effect. And it doesn't have the same detrimental effect on human health or the ecostructure or the environment either.
Okay, thank you. Justin.
Thanks for that, George. I waited patiently there. Just going back to the question a while back, it's very interesting listening to all this, by the way. And I thought George knows this, but I was involved in healthcare medical planning for a decade as well. So I've been involved in hospital design and infection control. So I've also got a bit of an understanding of some of what's being said. And we know about mycelium resistance, the Staphylococcus aureus and whatever, MRSA. But the reason I put my hand up, George, was this. I think the lady's dropped off now. I've forgotten her name.
Debbie.
Debbie, thank you. So Debbie mentioned that teenagers not opening windows. When we talked about the basic points about how do we fix this, George, is it how from a design point of view might this be addressed? And I said about education and whatever. One of the things I think with some of these molds, and as Graham's pointed out, there's many molds, but not all of them are damaging to people's health.
Yeah.
But if you could see the mold, then you'd take action. And I think potentially part of what's happening is people can't visually see the problem. Now, if you had some kind of monitoring device, which Nick would know a lot about, I'm sure. If there was a monitoring device in my room that basically lit up when spores that were damaging to my health or the household's health were detected, and it basically said, take action, open a window, open all the windows and doors for 5 minutes, as apparently they do in Germany, and close them again. If there was some kind of device that said, at present, there is an elevated level of dangerous mold, perhaps people would take the required action instead of saying, you mentioned, Graham, about relative humidity outside. So what's the point in opening the window on a rainy day with high humidity when the humidity, the air quality, or whatever you want to call it, outside might be worse than it is inside the house as far as content goes. And I learned something about the fact that mold requires food. I had no idea, because I know it lives on walls in my friend's house, but it requires a food source. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. It loves cellulose. So, you know, and don't forget that the big thing with mold is I think that people need to understand that the spores are between 1 and 20 microns in size. Now, asbestos is between 1 and 10 microns, and that's why it gets through the respiratory system so easily. And once it's in your lungs, then you know, we have well, we know that your lungs can't break down asbestos, but with mold, depending upon your own bodily reaction to the mold and the mycotoxins, it can cause anything from mild symptoms to really severe.
Yeah.
When we're talking about Awaab's law, I mean that particular. I mean, we work for Rochdale Borough Wide Housing. We're now debarred because one of our directors is a board member there, so we can't work for them. And basically, that was a disrepair case. So what you won't hear is that their solicitor says, "Oh yes, if you elongate the case, you get more cash out of this." And in the meantime, that young lad's in a property that's having a really adverse effect on his health. It's crazy.
Can I just bring someone in, please? Actually,
Yep.
we've had hundreds of meetings over the last few years, and never once has our admin manager said anything during a meeting. That's actually going to change. Just put your camera on, because you've got a question.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about trickle vents. Like nobody was talking about trickle vents in a property. Like the trickle vents should be always open, so that would reduce the condensation inside the house and thereby reduce the mold growth.
Yep. We done
Trickle
an
vents.
experiment. We done an experiment with trickle vents and found that actually, unless it's really windy, the change to your indoor temperature is it's so minuscule. But the change to the air quality was massive.
Yeah.
That was with different types of heating as well. So we done it with quantum storage heaters, old storage heaters, your sort of standard gas and infrared, and it made no difference. Particularly with the infrared heating, it made no difference to the air temperature. And that's the thing that people. Oh no, I can't. I need to keep. I always keep my trickle vents closed in the winter because it's cold outside. And then explain it to tenants. Well, actually, unless it's winds over a certain amount, you're not going to see any difference.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I'll back that up. There's a number of different things that I probably want to bring together on this, but absolutely trickle vents, looking at a whole home ventilation strategy is really fundamental, which comes back to what we are kind of talking about earlier on, which is the root cause. It sounds like, by the way, there's an amazing product there that's not going to in of itself have any volatiles and harm people around cleaning mold. Great, cleaned it, but what's the root cause, right? And root cause is poor ventilation, excess humidity, and underheating. They're the three main root causes of mold occurring in the property to begin with. So ventilation, the ability of the property to to make sure that it's getting rid of that excess humidity from the property is really important. Trickle vents, effective ventilation in your wet rooms, your bathroom, in the kitchen. Is it been serviced? Has it been cleaned? Has it been deactivated? Was it the right specification to begin with? If you've got undercuts underneath the door, there's a whole kind of there's a whole backlog to that. Underheating. Okay, great. You've got the most efficient heating system in the planet, but can the resident afford to heat their home? Okay, underheating, 50% of cases in our data shows is the primary causal factor.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you've got the ventilation. It doesn't matter if you've got effective fans. If you can't afford to heat the home, guess what? You're going to create surfaces where condensation is going to occur because you're going to achieve the dew point. No matter how many times you go out and clean it. So you're coming back to, well, what's the root causes that's going on? And I think we probably need to. We've got some great different disparate solutions that we're all talking about here. We're all part of the jigsaw, I think. But if we come back to the question is, what's the framework look like for Awaab's law? And Awaab's law is quite specific in terms of things like response times and data-informed decision making to make sure you're doing effective fixes. Okay, and I think we probably need to come back to, there's a huge amount of science, I'm sure there is, behind a lot of these things. But what have we got to do to make sure we respond effectively and arm and give the right tools, the right insights, the right capabilities to housing providers to respond, first of all, to Awaab's law. And then we move from that response, which is reactive. And let's be really brutally honest with you, of the 4.4 million social houses out there, we're not suddenly going to remodel all those houses to modern standards. There's also, so we've got to deal with what we've got. be more reactive, but be more focused and targeted. Then move to how do we prevent this moving forward? Because you're suddenly not going to change all these properties overnight. And resident education, again, said it a moment ago, there is a perception, trickle vents, you're letting all the heat out of the house. That's a resident education, resident engagement piece. Okay, turning the fans off. That's a resident education piece, right? It's what's best for them. So making sure we can feed this information back to them. Did you know by turning that fan off, you're causing this problem in your home? Did you know by blocking these vents, you're causing this problem in your home? Did you know that by not heating long enough, you're causing this problem in your home? We've got to engage the resident as really as part of this and not treat them as the enemy. You know, I work for a large housing provider in Merseyside. I'm just going to finish this anecdote. A really large housing provider in Merseyside. And let's be honest, we're dealing with some of the vulnerable in society, right? They're not cash rich. Let's be really clear. Someone comes knock on their door and says, "We can get you £5,000 for doing nothing." They're gonna who's gonna say no? Right. We followed the claims farmers going postcode by postcode by postcode from the disrepair claims that come in. That didn't follow our data in terms of where the actual issues were. Right. It was absolutely claims farmers. Okay. But you know, you can't always blame the resident, I think, for what's going on. In actual fact, you absolutely cannot. I sat with the ombudsman regulator. You absolutely cannot blame the resident in any way, shape, or form. Has the home been an effective home to begin with for the people that are living in it? Okay, if the resident isn't educated enough to understand the impact on their home, okay, let's do our best. But then where we've done that, and if it's still not obliging, but we've got the data that sits behind us to show that we've done our best, then that isn't the resident, but they are the outliers. And I think, you know, the vast majority of people just want a safe, warm home.
So, but I just like to come back on that and for a second, Graham. Right. So, I absolutely agree with you, Nick. Right. One of the things that we've not mentioned, which is something that that Alex and I have been talking about. Alex is from Total Mobile. He's working with Nick already. He's got one of the technologies that we're hoping to have as part of a solution is 360 photography. So the point is, what we're doing in fire safety, we're encouraging people to take 360 photographs so that the evidence of what is there in terms of fire safety measures is actually captured in a way that is auditable, etc. Now, one of the things, Nick, that I think we could be. I mean, Connor, I think you're already using 360s, aren't you, to an extent? What I think is possibly part of the solution is when the person goes to first visit the site to identify what the problem is. If they take a 360 photo at that stage, then not only you can see the context of that particular item, rather than simply taking a series of still photographs. You can't see maybe what's around it, and it also gives you information about how that space is being used. So my recommendation is that we do that. The second thing is that we're already capturing on the regulation 38 requires you, this is the fire safety regulations, it requires the landlord to have a set of floor plans with the safety critical assets on them from a fire perspective. Now, that means that you can identify against each space what that space is supposed to be used for. So if, for example, it's being used for storage or something like that, that needs to be reflected back in a fire strategy plan. Now, if we can then look at that from a point of view of what spaces are being affected by the mold, what are they adjacent to, what's above it, what's below it, then and also then you can look at that from a point of view of if there is any internal ventilation, which systems and circuits are supposed to be performing in that area. I guess what I'm saying here is looking at things from a golden thread perspective, rather than simply looking at we're solving a problem with damp and mold. Actually, what we're doing is looking at things from a point of view of asset management. You know, what does the building contain? What systems are in place to protect people, and how can we then pull those together? Because then, if somebody comes in and does some remedial works, they could turn a good space into a poor space because of the remedial works they've done.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
ought to be something that we can pick up. Sorry, Graham, you were going to say?
Yeah. I mean, has anybody heard of the Swiss cheese model?
Yes.
Right. Well, the Swiss cheese model was developed by the NHS fundamentally.
Do you want to explain it? Sorry, Graham, go on.
Yeah. Well, Swiss cheese has holes in it.
Hmm.
Can I put something up on the screen?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
We've only got
how do
we've only got a few minutes left, but
Yeah.
please do. Yeah.
Yeah. How do I do it?
You go to the top right-hand corner
Yeah,
where it says
share.
share.
Yeah. Allow.
Don't press the other one because you'll leave.
Yeah. Right.
I've
Okay.
done
I'll
that.
share that. Right. Can everyone see
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
the Swiss cheese model?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one we've developed as part of our training. So you're basically going back to the core issues that was explained before. My view is you go down this route of building design and fabric, and the point you made eloquently, when we changed from timber windows to UPVC and made them hermetically sealed, we fundamentally changed the way that building was. And nobody ever took any notice of it really because they didn't know. Similarly with doors. So it's about the building design and fabric, and then going through the stuff that's on there, the building maintenance issues, and then more particularly the resident behaviours and awareness. The whole point that everybody's been talking about is what does the customer need to do? And I can tell you now quite categorically, and I can show you the evidence in photographic terms that we've had now for, as I say, over 4.5 years. The majority of the biggest problems that we have are down to the conditions of the property per the tenant more so than the building design and fabric. It's the cleaning of the way that they dry the clothes inside, the way that they do things in their properties, the open pans when they're cooking. They don't close the doors to the bathroom. Is the bathroom door got a gap on it underneath that's going to allow it for the air to be sucked through and out with the fan? There's loads of stuff, and they're your core issues. And the last bit is going down onto the monitoring and the data, and housing associations themselves. A lot of them are still living in many which ways the dark ages. Anyway, that's one of the things that we do our training on. Stop sharing. There we go.
No, I think that's great. So, well, I think we're just about out of time now. I hope everybody's found it useful. What we're trying to do is to one of the things that we announced last time was that we're looking to get solutions together, and we were proposing to do a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So getting maybe a couple of landlords, a couple of technology companies, and designers and FMs together to actually come up with some solutions. So I still think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And we can have different ways of approaching things, perhaps. So if everybody's still on board with that, we'll arrange another meeting. We've got the forum meeting next Wednesday, where that's for those of you who don't know, we have the forum meeting every month, and we typically get. Or do you want to explain it, Richard, quickly?
Yeah, we usually get 200-300 people come along. The number's building all the time. This will be a bit, probably a little bit smaller, probably about 150, 200. It's regular, monthly. We look at different issues every month, have different guest speakers every month. It opens up to a lot of other meetings. I mean, some of you have probably come into this meeting via the forum, or the meeting you came from before. It came from the forum meeting. That's on the 3rd, next Wednesday at 11 o'clock. So if you want to come along to that and you haven't had an invite, just put forum in the chat and we'll grab you. Get an invite out to you.
Good. Okay. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you feel it's been worthwhile.
Actually, if
Yes.
you're interested in
Thanks, everyone.
doing the challenge, put challenge in the chat as well. I know Alex, who is co-leading this group with George, has got quite a team together, actually. He's really going at it, so you'll need to catch up.
Including Connor.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Ah.
Yeah, we Wheatley are very interested in being part of the challenge. Taking that to some members of the exec team, and they're really keen on it. So I missed last Friday because I was off. I don't have anything in my diary for this week, so I don't know if he's arranged any follow-up meetings.
No, I don't think he has, but we will chase him up on it.
Yeah, he certainly will be.
Yeah, because I'd asked for minutes and stuff for what happened at Friday's meeting, but I've not got them yet either.
Yeah, I don't know either. Fortunately, that's one that I'm not actually sharing. I think I was at it, but I'm pretty sure it'll be recorded actually, Connor. So we can send you that.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Right, thank you very much. Interesting.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right,
Okay, guys,
cheers.
cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.